law enforcement capabilities, and safeguard lives, property, and investment across the country.
President Bola Tinubu speaking there. Now joining us this evening to analyze this budget proposal by the president, Professor Bongo Adi, who is a professor of economics at the Lagos Business School, and Vahiala Kwaga, a senior researcher and policy analyst, budgets. Thank you very much for joining us this evening, Mr. Kwaga, and thank you for joining us as well, Professor Bongo Adi. Professor Bongo Adi should be able to hear us in just a moment, but welcome to the conversation, Mr. Kwaga. I hope you can hear me clearly.
Very well, very well. Thanks so much for having me.
I'm happy to have you with us this evening. So right off the bat, I know that our budgets you leave for moments like this. So what has been the conversation, around your editorial tables since you got your hands on these documents?
I mean, it's been conversations that are marked by worry and concern, specifically because the size, though seemingly ambitious, is one that is curious in the sense that we have had a devaluation of the naira happen right before our very eyes. So the move to unify the exchange rates, for instance, moving our exchange rate from 400 to around 750, and the impact of inflation actually means that we are technically spending less, about 1.5 trillion naira less for 2024 than we allocated for 2023. But, these things are not really communicated because inflation, as much as you might hear it month on month or year on year, people do not really know how bad we have it. So this is one reason why macroeconomic assumptions are very key and very important. And that brings me to my next comment. The macro assumptions underpinning this budget conceive of inflation as hovering somewhere between 21%. We are currently at 23.7%, if I'm not mistaken. And we are aware of the drivers of this inflation, a lot of them being revolving around security issues, infrastructure, etc. Apart from inflation, there's a GDP projection, and the GDP projections are again extremely ambitious. This is also curious in the sense that there are conflicting reports in the media as to a very, very weighty pronouncement by the president of wanting to move Nigeria to $1 trillion economy. I'm not sure whether it's in 3 years or it's in 10 years, but either way, from our calculations, if he's moving it in 3 years, we're going to have to do at least 77% GDP growth for every year. If we're doing it in 10 years, we're going to have to do at least 21% GDP growth. So, these are very worrying projections. If, coming from the president, they really mean anything. Looking at the critical allocations in the budget, education is receiving about 7.9% of the total budget. And yes, one can say that education is not entirely under the purview of the federal government. The states do play a role. And that statement would be correct. Far too often, we put too much attention on the spending of the federal government without putting, the exact same attention on the spending of the states, and the states get away with a lot of things. However, I think this budget could do a whole lot more for education, looking at our literacy rates, looking at the out-of-school children rate, and the specific interventions that the government had begun in the past, keeping them and sustaining them. The health sector, according to the federal government, got about 5%, which is, again, less than the Abuja Declaration. One can, again, argue that these are not solely for the federal government to handle, but also for the states. And again, we need to shine more light on the states. But as it is, for the primary healthcare arm, or the primary healthcare value chain that the federal government is handling, these are destinations of allocations, of budget allocations that need substantial funding. And even for the remit of the federal government in terms of health infrastructure, especially within the context of this Japa wave that medical practitioners are now a great part of, we really do need to see more spending. Yeah, so I think I'll just leave my comments there.
Right. Well, let's hear from Professor Adi. From an economist perspective, how realistic is this budget proposal in your opinion?
Well, thank you very much for having me, and thank you, Barrister Wala, for those insights that you've shared. And I can't agree any less with you, regarding the projections and the analytics around the budget. Yeah, so in terms of realism, a budget is realistic if it's meeting the core fiscal or policy objectives, because that's what our budget is all about, how government makes money and how it spends it. So what are the core objectives of fiscal policy? The first one is to grow the economy, expand or boost the economy. The second one is to boost employment, job creation. Third is to boost investment. Of course, without investment, government has some capacity to create jobs, but it's always better, if you want to grow the economy sustainably, it's always better to have the private sector, grow the jobs. So investment-led job creation is better. So that can only happen if you boost investment. Then the third one, has to do with the fourth one has to do with the management of the deficit. Okay, and then the last one, but not the least, is about social equity. Equitable distribution of wealth in the economy and social inclusion. So those are the 5 core objectives of fiscal policy. So when a budget addresses these issues, then you will say that the budget is realistic. Of course, if we take it at face value, listen to what the president said, and then if you read the budget document, you conclude that maybe that some of these core issues are addressed. So economy is going to grow at 3.5%, so they said. There's going to be emphasis on education and job creation, especially for the youth, which is good. I mean, in terms of demography, Nigeria is preponderantly a youthful country. So the average age, the mean age today is around 18. Even though some people may put the median to be something around 16 years old. So that means we are disproportionately very young people. So anything that wants to live the lives of young people will really go well for the economy. And then in terms of investment, the government is also talking about bringing in, making the conditions more favorable for private sector participation. And then he spoke about public-private partnership, and because that's became scrambled for the 8 years of the last administration, because initially we thought that we'd go that route, but eventually the government now sees the commanding height of the economy. And then the other one about social equity and the welfare. So yeah, there's a lot of talk about that. About the vulnerable and the poor, using social interventionist programs to address that. I have problems with that, because that's exactly what we saw for 8 years, and then there is nothing to show for it, and now we have persistent poverty, and in fact poverty has become endemic to the point where Nigeria has been characterized as the poverty capital of the world. So meaning that social intervention, maybe the mechanism of delivery is faulty, or they are not telling us the truth around about what's going on there. Then debt, the deficit management, which is what budget is supposed to be. Okay, so there again we have a very big lacuna. So the budget is going to be funded by way of more borrowing, not less. So meaning that the deficit is bound to expand. Then we need to draw the impact from that. What is going to be the repercussion of expanding deficit in an economy such as ours that is already hit by high inflation? By the way, the African Development Bank the IMF has released its new forecast for the global economy, whereby they downgraded African growth, by a further 5%. Then what that means is, and then the reason for that is that the fiscal context, global fiscal context has become too strict for Africans. So there is not going to be any. So there is funding squeeze. It's not going to be easy for Africans to raise money for the core investments they need to make economies, and that's a very big problem for us. So when government talks about borrowing more money, so you now have to look at where that money is going to come from and the rate at which you're going to get that. It's not going to be any favorable, and if it is not, and it will definitely not be, that means we're going to be looking at higher levels of inflation in 2024. Okay, inflation has done enough damage. Barrister Wala just mentioned to you that we lost 1.7 trillion, to inflation, even though it's not, so they are giving us nominal figures. But in actual fact, they said, okay, we are spending less in 2024 than we spent in 2023, even though nominally it appears to be bigger. And that is the area that nobody's talking about. Yeah.
I apologize. I was just going to, piggyback off that point that you made, and talk to Mr. Kwaga, because I think that it's a very important point that we are missing in this conversation, right? To the average Nigerian, like you said, Professor Adi, it looks like we're spending more. But when you account for inflation, the real spending, is staring at you in the face, and it's abysmally poor. And when you compare that to what is already a crushing debt stock, it becomes even more worrisome. Mr. Kwaga, how do you expect all of this to determine what, this budget does for Nigerians in 2024, particularly when you look at what the president has said his priorities are?
I mean, Prof put it better than I ever could, really providing an important perspective to the type of spending and, the rate at which we need to spend. I want Nigerians to, understand that budgets are proposals, and the meat of what Nigerians should be eating is in the implementation, again, like Prof had very accurately presented. For me, I look at past performance, and specifically for things like debt service, for instance. Debt service has actually been growing within the past 7 to 8 years and has been surpassing capital expenditure. So we're spending more on, debt service than we are building bridges and roads. And again, I'm sorry for, referring to Prof's submissions, but this is a very concerning trend in terms of just how far we want to see the budget, make the lives of Nigerians better and really improve them. While you can say that there has been a clear articulation, and I can give it to this administration for tying the budget to a national plan. One of the things we often miss about medium-term planning is that it should be hinged on something. You don't just make budgets and hang them on nothing. They must be tied to some overarching set of goals and objectives. And I can see that a bit, but we really need to ensure that the government sticks to this spending plan and turns the coin in favor of capital expenditure. What we've been seeing, in fact, I recently made some submissions on that to a gathering. We've had recurrent expenditure performance being close to around 70 to 80%, while capital expenditure oftentimes undershoots its own targets. And I think between 2016 and 2022, capital expenditure only once was about a billion naira less than the target. All the other years, it was less than nearly a trillion naira. So that is terrifying for any Nigerian that expects to see a change in their livelihoods. And, back to this issue of the impact of the budget, okay, let's even assume that the budget is large and can cater for the needs of Nigerians. What are we going to, how will that translate into improving livelihoods through improving productivity, through improving, the doing business climate? Because these are the very areas from which the government derives its revenue. And when the doing business environment is improved, when it's efficient and effective, and businesses can make money, you will see these inflationary pressures wind down. But if we cannot get things things as simple as security right, despite the amount of spending. I mean, the last budget, the supplementary budget, we spent nearly 23% of the supplementary budget on security. And, for this 2024 budget, we are spending, I think, around 12% of the total budget on security. So, like Prof said, we're seeing same old things over and over again. In Buhari's last 2 to 3 years, he increased the size of the security budget, which we also had noted in our publications. And Nigerians essentially were feeling more insecure. There were more deaths and there were more pockets of violence here and there. So really, my expectations are very, very muted. And I am actually waiting with bated breath on the implementation of the education, health, and infrastructure components of the budget.
Yeah, and I'd love for us to speak about that implementation of this budget vis-a-vis the performance of last year's budget in just a moment, because we see the variance, and I'd love to get your thoughts on what this variance tell us. But Professor Adi, you did speak to the inflation that Nigerians should expect in the coming year, and that's also a very important assumption of this budget here. They say that inflation is projected to average 21.4% before declining to 20.3 and 18.6 in 2025 and 2026 respectively. So in other words, we are going to actually see inflation hit 21. We're going to see inflation continue to grow steady before it starts to decline in 2 years and in 3 years, in 3 years to come. But just given our current trend as it is, and the projection for what inflation might hit by December, right? The projections don't look good, right? Both PwC, KPMG, they projected that will probably be hitting 30%, by the end of the year. I wonder if this assumption for the 2024 budget for what inflation would look like is realistic.
Again, realistic means whether we will be there at the end of the day. We have to look at the key drivers of inflation in order to really diagnose that question that you asked. What are the key drivers of inflation? So inflation is intrinsically linked to the exchange rate, right? Then the exchange rate is also determined by our fiscal situation. I mean, what you call the current account or the balance of payments. So when you are borrowing so heavily, it's going to kind of undermine your macroeconomic parameters, especially the exchange rate and the interest rate, and of course, inflation. So this is supposed to be the harvest season or post-harvest season. So, so core inflation may be neutral, but food inflation is supposed to start to come down, and food inflation is the most volatile. But then, given that this is post-harvest season, we're almost in December, and then food inflation is still running high. So that tells you something. Okay, we're not, able to evacuate maybe food from the farm gate, or we didn't even farm enough in the past agricultural season for so many reasons, maybe insecurity, erosion and flooding and all of that. So those are some of the issues. And then, of course, the collapse of infrastructure could also be blamed. So if this were the case, and then we have rising inflation when we are supposed to see inflation trending down. So I struggle to see the basis for expecting that inflation will begin to trail downwards. But the major driver of inflation in today's Nigeria are the money supply, which keeps growing. So if you check the data for M2, so it's shown that it's grown by almost 30% since June this year. Okay, so when you have that kind of surge in money supply, you cannot expect a lower inflation, and there's no reason to expect that to decrease. Okay, we are going to borrow more money to fund the budget. So when you do that, again, you have a negative balance of payments, which will knock on your inflation rate. So inflation will definitely go up. So it depends on who you are looking at. I mean, the Office of Statistics put inflation at 7%. But then if you follow Steve Hanks, who actually has a more transparent, more objective and verifiable way of computing inflation for different countries, he puts it at 33% currently. Okay, and this is we are entering the festive season, so we're going to see a lot of spending. Inflation will go up, and then even in January, it will drive higher. And then given the global conditions as well, okay, inflation is beginning to abate in Europe, in the United States. But that's not the case in Africa because of the funding squeeze that I referred to earlier. So we don't expect inflation to go in that direction. It will be higher than what they are projecting. It's currently higher than what they are projecting. So the basis on which they make their own predictions is not clear to us. Okay, so that is one thing. Another thing I wanted to add before you switch is that the assumption for growth is also not really robust. Why do I say that? Nigeria's economy, okay, if you look at the GDP component, so you've got consumption, you have investment, you have the government spending, and then the external sector, the net export. Now, investment is just a paltry 9% of our GDP. That's the contribution of investment to GDP. Government contribution, that is all these things, is about 4%. Okay, that may be small, but it's very catalyzing. Now, consumption component of our GDP is above 60%. So what that means is that if Nigerians, if there is no investment, if you're not trading with any other country, nothing comes up, like our current account is in the negative. That is, we're importing more than we are exporting, okay? And government doesn't spend. Nigerians will still eat. Since we have 60% consumption, okay, that can actually grow the GDP by more than 3.5%. We have not added anything, right? We're just eating because consumption is 60% of our GDP. And then there are consumption-driven non-oil sector, which is the sector that receives the investment. So that investment is all channeled towards consumption. Now, if we consume only, our economy will grow. So that's why I think that when you say the economy will grow by 3.5%, it simply says that, okay, you are not willing to do much. Okay, because if you really want to do something, if you really want to grow the economy, expand the economy, we should be talking about an economic growth of around 5 to 6%. Yeah, when I hear that, then I know, okay, there is certain commitment to some deliberate policies to grow the investment sector, okay, which will now further grow job creation and welfare distribution. Another component that I want to speak to before you switch, sorry.
Yes, that's fine, Professor.
Is this idea of social investment. So we can't be doing the same thing, okay, over and over again and expect that we're going to get a different result. That will definitely not happen. So what am I saying? This idea of distributing handouts to poor people and all of that has not worked anywhere. In fact, I'm writing a paper right now, okay? So before, I'm looking at financial inclusion to see if it is actually lifting people out of poverty or in fact, including people in the financial system. Okay, so to do that, we conducted a systematic literature review, okay, analyzing more than 450 publications, reviews. So what we're doing is a meta review of reviews. So what we've seen is that it is not even clear that financial inclusion is helping people to step out of poverty, just like microfinance. And that's why the international development system have shifted away from microfinance. All this micro that. Research has shown that they have not delivered on poverty alleviation. So why do we prefer or choose to go that route? Okay, the only way that can lift people out of poverty is the economic growth. And how does the economy grow? If the big corporations, okay, the industries, the manufacturer firms, if they grow, they now have enough absorptive capacity for labor. And then when that happens, then it creates a kind of a positive feedback loop. And by creating jobs for people. and then it trickles down to everybody. And that's, just like they say, a rising tide boils up all boats. So the only thing that can eliminate poverty, address social inclusion or exclusion and all of that, is a growing economy. And looking at the budget, I do not see anything that convinces me that there is a deliberate attempt to really grow the economy by using private sector-led mechanisms.
Right, and it's interesting that that you say that, because in some of the areas where we see a lot of private sector-led development in Nigeria are ICT. We see that in health. We see that in education as well. But somehow the government is focused on defense, and one can argue that the fact that farmers can't go to farm in some parts of the country has triggered, food inflation across the country, which in itself has had its own cascading effects on other parts of our society. I was just taking a look at I was looking at the percentage, the capital budget utilization by MDAs as at December 31, 2022. And the defense and Office of the National Security Advisor, got 98% release and 100%, release of funds budgeted for these agencies. And I wonder if the government is perhaps going, spending a lot more fighting defense and defense only at the detriment of other sectors that actually need development, especially the private sector. Or is this in your opinion something that we cannot avoid at this time given our current situation with security?
Even though I say that government sector is just about 4% of, the contribution of government is 4%. But that is very significant because, like I said, it's very catalyzing. And then in many facets of national development, there are some things that the private sector has no incentive to do. Security, for instance, has to be provided by the government. But then we are looking at the record of government in delivering on that. Swaths of regions in the country today are completely cut off by all manner of criminal gangs and insurrection and all of that. So, which is creating a lot of problem for governance and for especially for logistics. So you cannot cover so many areas. In fact, some FMCGs, fast-moving consumer goods firms, have had to close outlets in so many parts of the country. So. And trucks are no longer covering so many areas because of insecurity, and because of that, it's no longer possible to evacuate food from the farm gate to the cities, and that is what is fueling inflation as it is now. What should the government do about this? So, government, we believe, has the capacity, to arrest insecurity in many parts of the country, but right now we are not seeing that. It appears that there is a sort of a leadership failure in the Nigerian, security system, because we can see that the same thing is ongoing over the years, and we have not managed to arrest. Okay, I can understand there are some sort of cross-border, terrorist groups that are terrorizing large swaths of the northern fringes of the country, but there are some internal security issues that anybody would have thought that the security system would, comfortably deal with. But that has not happened, so that is a big problem.
Right.
Now, what I don't understand is whether throwing money at all these things will solve the problem. So if we look at the budget, I think Barrister was saying that, okay, we spend so much money, yet we are not getting any result for that. What I have proposed that, in my engagement with the media earlier yesterday, I think that we need to look at the mechanism for the delivery of the budget. I think that's where the problem is, and Barrister Kwagga mentioned that. It's all about implementation. The taste of the pudding is in the eating. So it's not about proposals. So what is the mechanism for the delivery of these services? Except the mechanism is rigid, or we see some sort of serious intention on the part of the government to change that mechanism, it is actually difficult
Mr.
to assess what will happen.
Mr. Kwaga, if you could quickly speak to, the budgeting for health and education in this 2023 budget, this 2024 budget rather, vis-a-vis where we actually are and where we need to be as a people.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. I think health and education, as alluded to by Prof, are the drivers of a literate, numerate, and healthy population. For you to have a population that is able to be absorbed by industries, whether they be small, medium, or large, there has to be some level of capacity on the part of the citizens. And it's unfortunate that education and health, some could argue, are soft investments in the sense that you often do not see the impact as immediate as you would see a road built or a bridge built or a school built. But because these things are, in quote, invisible and may not reflect until years down the line, it's not politically expedient oftentimes for politicians who think in 4-year cycles. So looking at what has been before us in terms of the budget and, where we need to be, I'm still very, very concerned, with the implementation. Apart from the fact that the total size of the health or the total allocation of the budgets to health and to education is smaller than it should be. The problem, the scepter, if you will, of implementation is one that is really probably going to come back, to bite us. And I fear, perhaps now more than ever, with the rise in insecurity and the fact that several parts of this country have had, their health facilities destroyed. We also have the growing economic malaise that has prompted a lot of our medical practitioners to japa, as we say colloquially, or relocate abroad. In fact, I was reading something in the paper, I think yesterday or today, and it was like a fear-mongering title, but it said something like hospitals will soon shut down because of a lack of medical practitioners. There's no smoke without fire. So while it may be a bit outlandish to put it that way, there is a real problem of the relocation of health personnel in the country. So moving forward, I think what I would like Nigerians to really take to the bank is, as much as we concentrate on the federal government and the amount of spending that they have proposed, we do need to ensure that the implementation process, which is shared by the National Assembly and the Budget Office of the Federation and the Ministry of Budget and Planning, we really need to look at how those institutions, oversee the process of implementation, because far too often, a lot of Nigerians are unsure as to, what can we do about implementation. The National Assembly really is the arm of government empowered to provide that oversight function as to how the budget is being implemented.
Right. Well, I want to say thank you very much for your insights and your time spent, digging into these budgets proposal. Obviously, there's a whole lot more that I would love to cover, but I'm way past my time on this. But thank you very much again, and hopefully we get another avenue to dive into these numbers here and what they really mean for Nigerians. We've been speaking with Vahiala Kwaga, Senior Researcher and Policy Analyst at Budget, and Professor Bongo, a Professor of Economics at Lagos Business School. Gentlemen, thank you very much and have a good evening. And that's the big story here on Radio Now 95.3 FM Lagos. Let's move over to the round table, where I've got a very, very interesting, I don't know what to say, but you know what? Here's it. Here's what happened. Yesterday, President Bola Tinubu went to the National Assembly to address a joint session and present his mandates, and they sang a song for him. That song is very personal. We heard that during the campaign trail, but how do you feel about lawmakers chanting this same hymn or singing this same song while the president was there? We'll talk about that in just a touch.
Police officer, now I know to make money today. I beg now. Hey!
Laolu! Today is the day you are going to pay for all your sins.
Something exciting out of the stables of Sanitary Pad Media Campaign.
Not me. First man I know well, wallahi. Since yesterday, my stomach I dey pain now. Come on, I no sleep.
Yeah. a radio drama soap, My Period, My Pride.
This woman, come on for road. You know they look your back. Come on for road, this woman, huh? Come on for road.
My Period, My Pride, an advocacy tool for the provision of free sanitary pads for schoolgirls in Nigeria, powered by Sanitary Pad Media Campaign with support from MacArthur Foundation and Radio Now 95.3 FM.
My Period, My Pride, Season 1, The Story of Ife.
Every Saturday at 10 a.m.
Go to Financial Services Regulation and Coordinating Committee FSRCC tinyere National Broadcasting Commission NBC johere adohu obodo aka na ntị banyere ndị na-atụ mgbere ego iwu akwadoghị bụ Illegal Financial Operators IFO nke na-eme ka ndị mmadụ ghara inwekwa ntụkwasị obi ọzọ tinyere na ngalaba na-ahụ maka ego na Nigeria enweghị nkwudosi ike ha jizi ohere agba ndị ọha obodo ka ha kwụsị ịtụnyere ndị na-atụ mgbere ego enweghị akwụkwọ ikike inwekwara ike ime nchọpụta banyere akwụkwọ ikike ụlọ ọrụ dị otu a site n'akara webụsaịtị ndị a www.cbn.gov.ng, www.nicom.gov.ng, www.pencom.gov.ng, www.sec.gov.ng. maka inye mkpesa banyere gburugburu ego n'ụdị ọbụla kpọọ 07002255226 08002255226 maọbụ +2348176656273. ozi a si n'aka FSRCC.
The issues are all around us, but who talks about them? Law enforcement breaking the law, property owners ripping off tenants, political office holders taking the electorate for granted, or is it the plague of recurring bad policies made by the government? These are the issues. Let's talk about these and more at the Round Table. Stay locked on to Radio Now 95.3 FM every weekday as we discuss these hot topics around us on The Round Table on Now Express. The Round Table, weekdays 5:30 p.m.
Bola, on your mandate we shall stand. Lawmakers were singing yesterday at a joint session of the National Assembly when the president went in to present the 2024 budget proposal. Now, I want to get your thoughts on this, right? Because right on the surface, it looks like, you know, one of those harmless things that politicians do to excite, you know, joy or whatever, or, you know, just to make themselves feel like one family. But then again, when you think of the fact that, hey, this is actually the arm of the government that should exist as an independent body, you know, the whole thing begins to take on a new begins to take on a new dimension. What are your thoughts on what, you know, the lawmakers did yesterday? 0913-5000-953 and 0901-1111-953. Kenny is active. Kenny, how's it going? Good evening.
Good evening, my brother. Chika, how you doing?
I'm fine, thank you.
How do you manage to cope with what is happening in this country? Chika, how do you cope?
Is that a real question, or is that a rhetorical
how do you, as in things that are happening, are they not mind-boggling to you? How do you read out all these things? Because I don't understand. You're not even bothered. The way you just read that is normal.
Look, man. It's I've lived
like
here. I've lived here for decades.
Where you buy your shock absorber? Let me go and buy.
Hey, look, Kenny, if you really want an answer, my response to that is that I see all of this as, you know, potholes. I see them as potholes on the path to on the path to our destination, right? I don't see this as our destination.
But when I know destination, Chika,
this is my belief, right? If you don't,
believe,
this is me, right? If you believe in destination,
from our own destination,
that's
your
fine.
Destination may be different from our own destination.
Me and you not supposed to go to the same place anyway. So I believe that there is a destination. This is not the destination.
We go meet for Second Niger Bridge or Bridgehead. Chika. Hello?
Yes, please go on.
Yeah, my brother, Chika. You see, our country now has become our government has become a transactional government. People, when they say what money cannot do, too much money can do. It's too much money that makes people to forget what they are supposed to do. 1 trillion naira, my brother, like this. You need to go gaga. The problem is something 27 billion. All of them went wire. They went offline. Both the Labour Party, both the PDP, all of them, they were just singing. I think they forgot it. They thought they are singing national anthem. Hope they will not change our national anthem on your mandate. Because they are standing on that mandate. I don't know the mandate. I know the mandate I'm standing on. You understand me? I see no reason why our leaders, you see many of them, they put doctor before their name. I don't know the doctor whether is I don't understand the kind of, you're supposed to distinguish between legislatures, executive and judiciary. Now Nigeria is becoming a one-party state, of which things that are supposed to be of our national interest or national priority will now turn into personal priority. That hollow chamber there, the Senate and what have you, that house there is the house of Nigerians. It's not the house of APC. It's not APC national headquarters. So I see that they're supposed to apologize to us. That person that blew that trumpet or that put that note, that keynote, is supposed they need to, in fact, I think they prepare for it. Apart, they need to come out and apologize to Nigeria because it's a big disgrace to us. He has to come out because he allowed it.
Kenny.
He has orchestrated, tried it, so it's not an emergency something.
All right.
You understand me?
I do.
Because not be surprised that on evil spread.
Right, Lagos wants to speak on this issue. Let's hear Lagos. 0913 5000 953 and 0901 1111 953. Do you have a problem with Nigerian lawmakers singing Bola on your mandate we shall stand at the National Assembly? Do you have a problem with that? Is it a thing that bothers you as a Nigerian, looking at what should be an independent arm of government? 0913 5000 953 and 0901 1111 953. These are the live studio lines to dial this evening to join the conversation. You can also leave me a note on WhatsApp. My WhatsApp line is 0809 682 2595. 0809 682 2595. Peter is calling in from Olodia Papa. Hi, Peter. Good evening.
Good evening, Chika.
Good evening.
Yeah,
Please
how
go
you doing? All right. The anthem that they played there is very, very embarrassing. For the history of Nigeria, I've never heard somebody singing an anthem of a president, Bola, on your mandate. Well, it's not surprising to me because Fabio had this Bola insignia head. This I don't know what this eyeglass or what. I don't know the symbol, Bola symbol. So
Infinity sign.
Everything now,
of
course, yeah. Everything now is going to one party, just like Kenny said. One party state is just an absolute
I don't think that we can call it a one-party state. I don't think it will be fair on APC because they are winning now. It's a one-party state. I think there's just something there's something bitter about when people say, "Oh, we're becoming a one-party state." I mean, APC is a majority.
But it's all over our face. Everything they do is just going towards APC. You can't deny that. It's going towards APC. Singing Bola on your mandate. I've never
Peter,
Okay, I'm hearing
hear
you.
me out, right?
Yeah.
So there are two
Hear you.
things, right? There are two separate things here. We can make an argument that APC is the majority, right? So in many ways, when they gather around, you can feel that alignment in interests. On the other hand, you can make the argument, and also you have to understand that even at the National Assembly, the approval of the budget or whatever, it would tilt towards the interest of APC members and APC caucus as a group in the House. There's not much we can do about it, right? If PDP or SDP or Labour Party lawmakers in the House wanted it to go another way, there's not much they can do about it either, right? But there's also the reality, right, that these are lawmakers who are supposed to be representing the interest of Nigerians, whether we voted them or not. How do you reconcile both realities? Because it's the truth. Two truths can exist.
Of course, they are in the majority in the House of Assembly and the Senate. But that place is not supposed to be shown like APC House. It's supposed to be like something like neutral. When it comes to national issues, it's not supposed to be shown as an APC House. I don't know how you get, whether you get me.
I do.
This is, of course, it's an APC-dominated House of Assembly. But the way it is now, everything is being shown as a one-party state. How can you be playing Bola on your mandate in the National House of Assembly? That is a big no. We are in a deep pit now.
Peter, I hear you. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Ambassador Musbao, you're on. Welcome, my brother. Please go on.
How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Perfect, thank you.
On your mandate, we shall stand. Nothing wrong with it. That's crazy. That will not stop them from performing their duty. They will just show, maybe, our president is here. What can we do to make our president happy? That's all. Show stamina.
Yeah.
And moreover, this is time to work. What's the mandate? The mandate is to make Nigeria better. Abi? I think that's all.
Let me ask you.
Mandate that to make Nigeria great.
Let me ask you something.
What to stand?
Let me ask you something.
Yeah.
What football club do you support?
Me. Hey, blue for life. Blue.
You're a Chelsea fan. When you say, I don't know, are you a blue? When you say blue, is that Chelsea or Sporting Lagos? Because two of them are blue that they wear. Which one are you?
I'm Chelsea. Blue.
Chelsea, okay, blue for Chelsea. All right.
I support stationary stores.
Okay.
Way back.
Oh, okay, you need to come to 2023. But imagine this, right? Imagine this. It is Champions League final.
Okay.
You are up against Bayern Munich. Yeah, it's Champions League final. You're up against
Bayern. I will beat them at the final.
I'm happy. Hey, look, I'm happy. You can dream and have aspirations, my brother. No harm there. But it's Champions League final. You're up against Bayern Munich. The referee, right? The referee goes to the coach of Bayern Munich, right, and starts to hail him, and starts to say, Babao, I greet you, hey, chairman, or anything for your boys.
After the game?
No, before the game. Before the game.
Have you seen when? Barcelona.
How would that make you feel?
Go. And the referee was jumping up.
Yeah.
Have you seen that?
Yes, I've seen that. How will that make you feel? How would that make you feel?
This one is different to that one.
No.
This one is totally different.
It's not. But it's not, right? No. But Ambassador Musbao, it is not, right? It is not. And maybe my analogy is off, but hear me out. I would, I'm not afraid. I would, right now, I can't. I can't. If you saw INEC chairman, right? If you saw INEC chairman a night before the election, enjoying dinner with one of the presidential candidates.
No. These are two different things.
Okay, because here's why I'm bringing up this analogy. The legislature is supposed to be independent.
Look, the and executive.
Right? It's supposed to be independent. No.
Moreover,
Ambassador.
Political party, you cannot separate butter with bread after rubbing it.
That's not.
It is our SPC, Stamina. Their leaders is there. He is the national leader now of the APC, and they are there. So to me, they have to show their solidarity.
The national leader that you keep calling him is not a constitutionally recognized position, even for the APC. Even for the APC. Even for the APC. Even for the APC. It's not a constitutionally recognized position. We know. We recognize Abdullahi Ganduje as the chairman of the party, and no one higher. And no one higher. Except in APC, you don't regard Ganduje. Are you telling me now? Are you telling me now that in the APC you people don't regard Ganduje because you've already told me that you're an APC man? Are you saying that you don't regard Ganduje?
I'm affiliated to APC. I'm a supporter.
I don't hear you.
I'm not a card member.
Okay,
but I support APC.
I don't hear you.
100%.
Can they go? Let me talk to Josh. Thank you. Thank you very much, Ambassador Musbao. Let me talk to somebody else. Josh Ryder, good evening. How are you?
Yeah, good evening.
Good evening. Please go on, my brother.
Okay. Someone said that in the midst of thieves, armed robbers, if you allow them, thieves or armed robbers, if you allow them to elect a leader, they will not elect an angel. They will elect a bigger armed robber that would allow them to do things the way they want. That's the situation of Nigeria. That's what someone said, not me. So, but no, this is it. Well, of course, anybody can use his tongue to count his teeth on that. But now, another thing again is the president released palliative to National Assembly to the tune of some billions, about how many billions, 70 billion, 50 billion, or something like that. What do you expect? Everybody got the loot or whatever palliative it is. Even in the midst of when people were crying that, there was no money in the economy, that everything was going up, inflation rate was going high, everything. What do you expect? Of course, if you, my people say, meaning that if you thank or if you praise a big man, you understand, or someone that has done well in what he has done, he will do well, he will do more. And that is it. So the point is that they've turned everything to a one-party state, and what can 8 parliamentarians do in the midst of how many? 110. Maybe if it is LP or if it is one person from PPM that has even decamped, is it PPM also that have decamped to APC. So, and again, all the places that some of the minorities won their elections, somehow they are taking it back. We don't know how the mathematics they are doing, but they are taking it back. APC, they are winning everywhere. You understand? So, what else are we expecting? Who's going to checkmate them in the National Assembly? There is just a one-party state. It's just unfortunate that Nigeria finds itself in this kind of situation. Well, I think I don't have much to say apart from this.
Josh,
thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Rex is calling in from Unilag. Hopefully we can have Rex back on air in a moment. But again, the question is, are we asking of too much from these lawmakers when we say separate your political party affiliations from your responsibility as a lawmaker? Obi is on air. Good evening, my brother.
Chika, how are you doing today?
I'm well, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, you are the only man that loves this country. That's why I appreciate you so much. You always have a Nigeria at your heart, always. Chika, before we call this your station, you will do something for us. For those of us that love Nigeria, you will bring Chongo, Amadu, for us to sue anybody that will pretend when you ask us question on radio. Make that thing happen. You understand? Then we'll start calling your radio. Thank you very much.
Look, man, I don't know. In my religion, we don't swear by our deity. I don't know about yours. Okay, so let the people who worship Songo and the other deity that you mentioned come and tell us if we are allowed to do that. I don't know. I don't worship. I don't worship. this spiritual presence. Okay, in my own, we're not they worship our own, our own deity. We don't do that in my village. We don't swear by our own deity. We don't do that in my village. Okay, so if you do that, let me know. Give us permission. We'll talk about it. Hello, good evening. Welcome, Peter. You're back.
Okay, I'm back. Quick one.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I don't see anybody that is bashing you for doing your job. You are just doing yourself to me. So nobody should pay you for being more Nigerian.
No, Peter, it's love. Yeah. It's love. Look, this man,
okay.
they're my peoples.
Okay, so quick one. We saw State of Union address in the US. We saw Prime Minister Rishi Sunak giving speeches in the House of Commons. We have never seen them playing the song of the President or Prime Minister in UK and US. This is wrong. It is absolutely wrong. That's what I'm concluding. Bye-bye.
All right. Thank you very much. This is one of those moments where, we have to ask ourselves if we are being truthful when we ask our politicians to separate their party affiliations from, their responsibility as a lawmaker in a house where they are the majority. Again, I'm not making excuses for everybody. Personally, I think what we saw there is embarrassing, right? It's embarrassing. That's it. It's end of story for me. I don't know that I don't know that, I can trust that crop of, politicians to put up any strong resistance to the federal government when they want to step out of line. I remember, at the last assembly when we saw lawmakers sign off excess loans from excess ways and means loans from the central bank to the federal government. We know what that is doing to our economy at the moment, and perhaps that would not have happened if we did not have lawmakers, bowing at the feet of Mr. President and talking to him and regarding him like he were a deity rather than a man who was elected to do the job of improving the lives of millions of Nigerians. And this is where we find ourselves with sky-high inflation. I don't know that I can trust this crop of politicians to do any different from what the last, National Assembly did, given what we saw yesterday. And, by every superpower in the universe, I hope that I am wrong. But if I'm not, well, we'll see what tomorrow holds. However, I think that the question I'm asking tonight is, do we actually expect better from our politicians? Because if we do expect different from our politicians, then we need to start electing people who will do different, not people who can win elections. That's one thing that I personally think we need to start thinking about as a people. Stop electing people who can win elections, or stop thinking of electing a person because they can win election, and start thinking of electing a person because they can do the job. They're two different things. And maybe when we start thinking in that direction, things will begin to change for all of us. But right now, given what I saw in that house yesterday, I think I can agree with a lot of you who say you're not pleased with what you saw. And that's it. My thoughts this evening, right here on Now Express. Thank you very much for spending your evening with me. My name is Chika Ago. I'm back tomorrow at 2 p.m. But stay with us. The news summary is up next. Have a good night.
Across Nigeria, Africa, and the world, this is Radio Now News.